Hi there, welcome back to the 12 Days of Christmas in July here at Our Little Handmade Home. We did it, we made it to day 12, and today is going to be the biggest project that we've taken on yet. This is a project that may take you longer than a day to complete, but I'm going to do my best to show you a quick and easy method for putting together this cozy Christmas quilt in just a few steps. Let's get started. Well, here we are with day 12. It's our biggest project yet, and I think you're going to love it. Today we are going to make a cozy Christmas quilt. What we're using for this is flannel. I've chosen 3 different prints to go together, but you can choose as many as you like. You can make it random, you can create a pattern, you can do it however you like. So these 3, obviously they go well together. And what I've done is I've chosen to rotate, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm making a quilt that is 6 blocks wide by 7 blocks long, and I'm cutting my blocks at 10 inches. So I've gone ahead and done that already. These, so that, as I say, they'll go 1, 2, and 3. Now, something to keep in mind is if you have directional fabric, which I do with all of these, as you're putting your quilt together, you're really going to want to pay attention to the designs. I've also chosen this fabric, the first fabric, as my backing fabric. I've also gone ahead and cut out 42 squares of the backing fabric, and then I cut 14 of each of these so that I could alternate 6 in a row, 7 rows. The next thing that I cut out is my batting. So I'm using quite a thin batting. You can use whatever batting you like in this. I wouldn't suggest using a fusible or, something that has a lot of crinkle like an Insulbrite. This is just a very lightweight, basic polyester batting, and it'll be fine for this quilt. So I've cut out 42 squares of my batting, and these are 9 inches. Because I'm going to be sewing a 1/2 inch seam around the edge of. So the way that we're going to put this together is we're going to start with 1 piece of the backing fabric. Let me just move some of these out of the way. And I'll put these off to the side. So how you build your blocks is you have 1 piece of backing fabric, you take a piece of batting, layer it in the center, and then you take your front or your top piece. I'll use this one just as an example. Okay, now keeping in mind that this is directional, so my backing is already going that way. And this one goes on top. Okay, and that's how you build your blocks. And what we're going to do is we're going to stitch across and in an X shape to hold your batting in place. Because of course, if your batting doesn't catch the seams over here, when you wash it, it's all just going to bunch up in the middle. So we really want to hold it in place. I've already sewn up a couple of them. Now you can use whatever type of stitch you like. You can use a straight stitch, or you can do something like you see here. I've just done a wavy stitch across it because I thought it was really cute. Added a little something. I quite like that. So once you do that, then you want to square up each of your blocks. Make sure that they're still 10 inches, or if they're, slightly smaller, because the stitching can gather it in. So go ahead and square those up, and then we'll start building our rows. So as you can see here, I have started to build my rows with my blocks. It's a little hard to see in such a close-up video, but as I told you before, I'm alternating 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now the next row, I want it to be offset. So, of course, I'm going 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. so that when I put it together, I'm going to actually see the diagonal colors on here. So you can put this together in a couple of different ways. Some people like to build all their blocks first and then put the rows together, then stitch everything together. Otherwise, you could do just the blocks for one row and put the row together. That gives you, it's a good opportunity for you to double check and make sure that none of your fabrics are going the wrong direction, and just to make sure that your stitches are good and everything else. So however you want to build it, go ahead and do it that way. Once you have all of your rows done, the important thing to remember is that after you've stitched all your rows together like this, I know you're super anxious to get to cutting, but what you want to do is make sure that you do a stitching line all the way around the edge as well, because otherwise you're just going to be cutting into this open spot. So after your rows are put together, make sure that you go around the entire quilt with the same width of stitch as what you've been using here. I've been doing a 1/2 inch, so that's what I will do, is I will have a 1/2 inch stitching line all the way around, and I'll be back to show you that, and then we'll get clipping. As you can see, we have ventured out of my studio briefly. Pardon the shadows and the shaky video, but this is the only space that I have currently that is big enough to actually lay out a quilt of this size. But I just wanted to show you what I've done here. So as I talked about before, I'm repeating the 3 fabrics, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then they form a nice line on the diagonal. So find a spot in your house that you have that you can lay out your fabric, preferably not with your cat jumping on top of it, as mine is attempting to do right now. And then work one row at a time. Stitch your one row together, move on to the next. You could put your rows together at that point if you want to, or you can do all the rows individually and then start building your quilt. We'll be back with the next step. All right, we are back in the sewing room now. As you can see, part of it anyways, I've started stitching my rows together. Now, before this quilt gets too unwieldy, I'm going to talk a little bit about the snipping. If you haven't seen these before, these are what you really want for this type of a quilt. They are designed specifically to snip fabric on these rag quilts, and they're much like a gardening shear where they spring back instead of a scissor, which you of course have to work at. So what I like to do is press my seams open because I have less chance of cutting my stitching lines, and then just go ahead and snip it as fine as you like. Of course, the finer you cut it, the more of a fray you're going to get, and that's what's going to really give it that cozy feeling. So remember that you'll need to cut every single seam. So put on a good movie, an audiobook, a podcast, Christmas one if that helps, and go ahead and snip it. After you've snipped all of your edges, then you're going to throw it into the wash, toss it in the dryer, and see how it comes out. All right, let's get cutting, and then we'll come back with the finished product. Thanks again for joining me for day 12 of the 12 Days of Christmas in July. I'm thrilled to have completed this project. It was a little bigger than I anticipated when I first started, and a huge thank you to all of you that have joined me throughout all these videos. Starting next week, I'll be back to a regular schedule of posting once a week, so be sure to check in and find out what's new, and thank you again for joining me. Any links that I have from today's project, I'm going to go ahead and put down below, and I'll also link to all the other projects in the 12 Days of Christmas in July series. Thank you again for joining me, and I'll see you back next week.